Hello and welcome to another exciting episode. My name is Bryan, host of the Plant Podcast. The Plant is brought to you by ThinManager Software, the global leader in thin client management and mobility solutions. ThinManager is a Rockwell Automation technology. In this episode of The Plant, we were joined once again by business manager Doug Coulter, as well as Nick Putman, our product manager for ThinManager. Doug has joined us on the show at least a couple of times before to talk about new version features and give a state of the union for ThinManager. These two play a big part in shaping the future development of ThinManager, the direction it heads, as well as the features that get priority when building future versions of the platform. Welcome to The Plant. I'm super excited. Today I've got a couple of pretty heavy hitters from the ThinManager team with us. Doug Coulter, our business manager, as well as Nick Putman, our product manager. Thank you guys both for agreeing to come on and talk with me a little bit today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Bryan.
It's very rare that I get you guys in the same place at the same time. We've got a training, so I'm taking advantage of having these guys together so we can talk a little bit about ThinManager and our roadmap for the future, where things are going, because these guys have the insights. I always make this joke, and I'm going to make it today too, but have you guys seen Minority Report?
Absolutely.
So for anybody who hasn't, Minority Report, with Tom Cruise, you've got these visualizations where it's all augmented and more or less virtual reality, where he's grabbing visualization, expanding, zooming in, throwing things around all in this huge display. And I've always, kind of joked that that's where the future of ThinManager is. We're all going to be able to do this. But I'm going to start this by asking you guys, how far away is this? How realistic is it to be able to integrate some of the technology from the HoloLens and some of these things into real life?
Sure. Good question, Bryan. We're really there today, to be honest with you. We've got support for a handful of different wearable devices, really taking advantage of augmented reality. We're able to take content that's pre-developed by engineering and without modifying content that's already existing today, deliver that to a handful of different wearable devices. I think this will really enable a lot of unique technologies and opportunities for people, both from training all the way down to the future state of operating in the industrial space.
And I think the key there is the fact that you're not having to modify your existing content in any of those situations, right? So the effort involved in actually getting something usable today is real, and it's not significant. So I think that's really well put there.
That's insane. I mean, it's supposed to be a joke. So I guess, right now we've got these wearable and the HoloLenses, and I know we've been working on facial recognition for a long time. I guess it would be insane to see somebody in a production space be able to just walk in and start using that technology, but it's crazy to hear that we're that close, or that it's actually here.
Well, I guess following up on that point, I think the platform lends itself well to adapting to these newer technologies because of the core centralization principles that we embrace with ThinManager. So I think the ability to pick up these technologies again in a fairly rapid way really is one of the key value propositions of ThinManager into the future for our customers.
All right, so let me ask you guys a little bit. We've got a point release coming up for ThinManager. We've got version 11.2, and I wanted to ask a little bit about what the focus of 11.2 is, and some of the fixes, any new features, kind of what we're working into this point release.
Sure, great question, Bryan. I think that a lot of the primary development around this particular point release has really been security driven. It's enabling the product to support future and more complex architectures, and really taking advantage of the product again in those complex and secure environments. We're adding something that we're calling the free RDP module. The free RDP module is going to add some enhanced visualization, as well as allow us to pick up support for different things like redirecting USB ports into running sessions within our environments, as well as allow us to pick up remote desktop gateway support across an environment that has a more complex architecture like an IDMZ. Some of the other features that you can expect to see in this release will be things like support for portrait mode displays. So as opposed to the typical landscape that we've always supported, we'll be able to have content on rotated displays. We'll continue to improve our localization, or what we're really referring to there as additional language support. We're also adding some integration for a wearable device. There's a particular device manufacturer that we've been working with called NIMI. They make a wearable band that allows you to authenticate yourself as a user. This is particularly interesting to our pharmaceutical customers right now because it's a way that they can authenticate themselves, especially for signing off on different processes that they do throughout the day. While they're in a clean room environment or in a full gowned up type of PPE, as you can imagine, if you're wearing a face mask or a hat, facial recognition becomes difficult. I could take my badge and hand that to Doug across the table here, and he could then continue to do that. With something like the NIMI band or other future wearable support, it's going to go ahead and it's going to look at me. It's going to make sure that I'm the right person wearing that band, and I can authenticate that using my biometrics. So again, in these environments that are more challenging to be able to authenticate an individual, I think we'll see a good level of adoption there.
And I think the key there is that you hear three features there that really have been driven by our existing customer base. In the first being portrait mode, that's been something that's been asked for a number of years. So that's being delivered in 11.2. And then with regard to that free RDP module, the ability to redirect USB ports has long been requested. A supported feature in ThinManager, the ability to take, a locally plugged in USB device of a Thin client and map it into a running remote desktop session is pretty significant for our customer base. And then the other security aspect is adding support to tunnel VNC. So fundamentally in ThinManager, we do a lot of VNC kind of screen sharing, both from the admin console and between managed Thin clients and ThinManager managed terminals. The ability to secure that VNC traffic is going to be really important to our customers, and again, very unique to ThinManager.
I gotcha. That's all really, really good stuff, and it brings me into my next question, because I was going to ask, where do we get the ideas for different features and different I guess fixes kind of present themselves, obviously, but you mentioned getting, customer desire and stuff like that. How do, I guess, feature ideas tunnel down either from the user or internally? How's that life cycle go?
Sure. I think that there's a kind of a combination there, Brian. I think that there's a combination of both, direct customer requests that have a very specific feature set. For example, the NIMI band. We're adding support for that band as we talk, but it doesn't mean that we can't extend that to other wearables. So we like to take what a customer asks for and try to expand on that. I think pragmatically, we try to look at the industrial space and really see what some of the challenges are that people are facing, and really how the product can meet into that. To incorrectly kind of quote Henry Ford, right? He always said, if I gave my customers what they wanted, I would have given them faster horses. So we have to look outside of that, and we have to be able to, to really see what the industrial space is looking for. I think a great example of that is kind of further out on our roadmap, and we can talk a little bit about that if that's one of the questions that you have.
I was going to ask the future, yeah.
So I think we could talk more about the future roadmap, as we progress here. But one feature in particular would be the what we're calling our web browser display client. I don't know that we've had specific requests for this one in any way, shape, or form, and I really think that this will be a significant driver in the market. What we're going to be able to do there is eliminate the need for physical or virtual infrastructure to host web-based applications. We're going to be able to drive this down to the Thin client and really simplify the overall architecture for a customer that's using web-based applications. Obviously, there's an increasing number of web-based applications out there, We'll be able to significantly reduce the amount of infrastructure required to host these applications. We hear the challenges of securing your environments and maintaining the different operating systems you have. And so that's, a feature where we've looked within our team to say, how can we better serve our customers? So I think that there's a lot of things, and our customers bring great ideas to us, but we've got to take some ownership there as well.
Yes, I think there's a really good mix typically of customer-specific feature requests, and to Nick's point, us trying to anticipate where we feel the market is going and the needs of ThinManager and how they're going to evolve. And some of those things we hit on really well, I think. Every once in a while, there's a feature that we've included that we might like to take back in the past, but there's definitely a good mix of customer-driven feature requests, and we track them. So we have an internal database where we track and rate every feature request that emanates not only from our customers but internally from our various channel partners as well as the Rockwell ecosystem. And we essentially assign scores to them. We try to score each one and determine the value of each one and what's the effort involved with actually delivering one.
Definitely are easier than others.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So myself, a systems integrator for many years and a user of ThinManager for many years, there's still a number of feature requests that are on our features board that I had years ago. And being on the other side now, I can appreciate why some of those things might not have been implemented at the time that I might have needed or wanted them. But there's still a history of them, and we're still tracking them and trying to fit them into a future release. So
yeah, I'm sure a lot of that comes, to do it right. Not just do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Not just slap a Band-Aid on something and necessarily get it to work, but to do it in a way that can work for others as well.
Yeah, and Bryan, like you said, there might be some things that appear on the surface to be very straightforward and should be easy to implement, but actually turn out to be very difficult. And the inverse is true as well. There might be some things that are easier than what you'd expect. So it's kind of always difficult to really put your finger on that until you're actually in development and engineering and seeing what that effort is.
So if a customer has a feature, how typically does a customer tell us about a feature request or about something that they want to know?
So we're using a tool internally and across a lot of the software platforms now with Rockwell. It's called AHA. That particular tool is available to any Rockwell employee. So grab an outside sales representative, grab one of your strategic account managers, let them know of this idea, and whether they're aware of this tool or not, let them know that they can go and they can submit that feature request. As soon as a feature request, as Doug was kind of explaining the process there, gets entered, any other Rockwell employee can come through and they can actually vote on these different topics. So as we start to see and pick up support for a particular topic, that's usually when we take it to development. And so to Doug's point, we take it to development and say, hey, we're starting to gain some steam on this particular topic. What do you feel the effort is in order to adopt that? Do we feel there's a security risk here? Do we feel that there's other concerns with a specific feature like this? Do we want to implement it as was stated by the customer, or can we expand on that to maybe make it more generic? Maybe it was an industry-specific feature, but how can we expand on that and make it available to others?
Up a little.
Absolutely. Yep. So really, for somebody that's looking to request a feature, I would suggest grab your strategic account manager and have them go ahead and enter that for us, and we'll go ahead and start looking at that.
Is it one of those things where somebody goes in to put in a feature set and it's already there and they can upvote it and stuff like that? I second this notion.
The crowdsourcing, essentially, of the features, absolutely. So there's a voting aspect to it. And then, as I mentioned, there's a scoring aspect to it as well, where you can internally score it yourself in terms of its impact, potential impact on the market, again, the effort involved with it, and then you factor in the number of votes that are actually driving the feature request. I think where the features that I think have made ThinManager so unique over the years have been exactly what Nick described there, which is maybe what seems to be a kind of a base feature request that our engineering team and product team sit down and expand. The idea of scanning a QR code evolved into our relevance location capability. Something as simple as that really, spawned something much greater. And similarly, somebody had requested picture-in-picture years ago, a display client nested inside of an existing display client, and that's actually what brought about virtual screens. So really, that customer source of feature requests has really what's driven the product to be what it is today.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and those are the users. Those are the ones using it and say, you know what would be great?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're using it every day. So yeah, they're going to be the best source of information there.
Well, so I also wanted to ask you guys, as far as industry trends, things going on right now in manufacturing, whether it be pharma or food and beverage or whatever, are there any trends that you can pinpoint that ThinManager hopes to take advantage of in the next few releases, in the future?
Probably. I think on my response there.
Well, I should say that you are willing to divulge as far as the future roadmap.
There might be. Well, industry trends. I guess that'd be thinking like security. I mean,
immediately.
Segregation of infrastructure.
Yeah, security's big.
Um,
Well, and you talked about the internal browser. I mean, there's a lot of different use cases for that. And that obviously, as things turn to more web apps and more browser-based applications, I mean, that is a definite trend that moving forward.
Yeah, I would say a big one would be security. As people start to connect their industrial and enterprise networks, typically the best answer in the past for a lot of our customers to secure their environment was to segregate their environment, to keep that network unconnected. Obviously, the goal of Rockwell as a greater enterprise is to connect the enterprise, right? And we really see ThinManager as a product that can help facilitate that. And so kind of as we talked with our point release, a lot of the recent features are driven around enabling the secure deployment of applications across these connected environments. And then part of that too is how do we actually go to market with that? Where we would have typically seen a single server be stood up before, we may be segregating lines. There may be firewalls between different lines to provide different breakpoints. And so, while not necessarily a roadmap feature, that's really what drove a lot of the need and the recent change in our licensing model to what we have today, the vFlex licensing, right? One of the big advantages is that now I don't have to let a licensing model dictate my architecture. I let my security-focused individuals and my cybersecurity experts drive the architecture, and then the licensing model fits whatever architecture that they did important, right? So I think that a lot of the changes more recently have been around adopting to a more connected type enterprise, enabling those features. I think the adoption of mobility is coming into play as well, and this really kind of gets into the overall architecture of what we're seeing in a lot of our industrial space. People are adding mobility and adding wireless connectivity in these plants, and there's better understanding and capability to do correct network segmentation to allow things like that. So I think we'll see some expansion on a lot of our mobile platforms as well, and taking advantage of some of those features, right?
Yeah, we definitely see. I mean, every year, Automation Fair, some of the other trainings and shows that we do, it's like ramping up every year. More people want to add mobility or increase mobility,
and I think historically we've had the luxury of ThinManager being very forward leaning. For many years we had a feature set called Term Secure, which evolved into what we refer to as relevance users today. And that was a very underutilized piece of the platform, and it was mostly because the domain controllers didn't exist or weren't available on the manufacturing side of the network. Well, eventually that started to change, and now domain controllers are pretty much the standard, even on the manufacturing side of the network. So guess what? Relevance users becomes a very predominant play now for ThinManager. I think it's very similarly with mobile technology. So I think ThinManager was ahead of the curve with relevance location-based content delivery, but the wireless infrastructures weren't necessarily there. Those are starting to catch up now, and now we're pretty much ready to already be deployed in those environments. So that's one real, kind of, not to play on words, but a secure feeling of a customer that they know that they've got a platform that they can trust as their needs evolve.
All right, so I do want to switch gears just a little bit because I wanted to ask, I guess from version 10 to version 11, a lot of what, I guess one of the more talked about features was integrating FactoryTalk and ThinManager closer. And I was just wondering if this upcoming year was going to see any additions to that, any, especially with View SE and I guess the updates they're making, is there going to be any further integration or anything like that with ThinManager?
Let's start that conversation with FactoryTalk activation. Really, that was the first, the first major enhancement to ThinManager that tied back into the FactoryTalk portfolio, and that was something that we included in the version 10 release of the product. So now, since that time, ThinManager can be purchased as either a FactoryTalk activated piece of software or our traditional activation method, ThinManager product licensing. With regard to FactoryTalk View, that's a great example, Brian. We have done some work, since acquisition, on authentication pass-through. That's the ability to pass a security token from ThinManager into running sessions of FactoryTalk View SE. And this year, we're really excited about the 12.0 release of FactoryTalk View SE, because there'll be some native functions, that ThinManager functions that get exposed within SE itself. Oh, cool. So if you want to know in SE what the ThinManager relevance location is on your mobile device, so that you want to do something dynamically within View SE based on that location, you don't have to write complicated VBA code to do that now. You'll be able to just simply reference the relevance location, via a function in SE. And there's a few others that are going to be added as well. And it's taking advantage inherently of our term mon ActiveX control. So there's a number of properties and methods that are in that ActiveX control that over time we'd like to expose more and more of natively within FactoryTalk View SE without writing any VBA code.
So one of the other products that we're adding some integration for and going to be supporting is the Asset Center platform. One of the requests that we've had numerous times from a lot of our customers was the ability to use ThinManager to not just deliver the entire Asset Center application, typically a thick client, can also be accessed through a web browser, but also to be able to check out a particular asset, most commonly an ACD file, which is what's used to program one of the Logix controllers. So we've got now support to be able to check out that specific application, utilizing FactoryTalk security based on the existing logged in user. When you launch that particular application link through ThinManager, it will check out your application, your ACD file. It will launch Studio 5000. You can make all of your edits to the controller program, and then you can check that back in. So again, this will be a big productivity enhancement for those that are using the revision control support of Asset Center for their Logix programming.
So Nick's early explanation there is that we always show the scanning of a QR code using relevance locations in our demos. And typically we're showing, well, there's a QR code here on the control panel. And when you scan that QR code, what gets delivered is Logix 5000, Logix Designer with the ACD file opened up automatically. Invariably in those presentations, there's an Asset Center user in that audience who raises their hand and says, well, hey, can I do that with Asset Center? Which basically means, can I check out that asset out of Asset Center before opening it? And previously, we didn't have the best of answers. We said that, well, yeah, like Nick said, we can deliver the Asset Center client application, but then you have to manually find that asset and open it up. Well, that kind of defeats the idea of relevance location-based content delivery. We want to check out the asset automatically, and this new integration enables that to happen. So we're super excited about that because that is something that's been asked for 5-6 years. So really excited about that.
It's really cool. I mean, it's a time saver, but also it can save time on naming conventions, all kinds of stuff, because people can tie straight to that. They don't have to go find it.
Yeah, and another big benefit there, Brian, is it's adding a layer of security around revision control for your most critical component, right? Your controller. We are going to be restricting access to who can modify those particular applications. And again, that's something that's natively done with FactoryTalk security and the Asset Center platform today. But now, not only can you not get to the desktop of the application, you can only get to the particular controller file that you are interested in and have access to. So we're really providing a very secure development environment for our customers with this integration.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, especially on top of the roles, groups, rights that you already have available through relevance user services. Well, I got a couple more questions for you guys before I let you get out of here. Not quietly, but somewhat quietly, subscription service for ThinManager has rolled out. I don't think we made a huge deal out of it. We did market it a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, because now you can buy ThinManager subscription-based. I wanted to ask, what some of the advantages are over perpetual, or just, do people just want to subscribe to products like they can for many others, or just basically what are some of the advantages of subscription?
Sure. I think one of the big ones, Brian, is the ability for our customers to have and use exactly what they need. In subscription, you're able to scale along with your growth. As my deployment of a particular facility grows, I can scale my subscription model, and I can also do what we're calling a restack. I can add features onto that. I can add different components onto that, as the project progresses. Well, you can still do that in a perpetual style licensing model. I think that becomes more simplified in a subscription style license, where I'm only really paying for and using what I need at the current time. And as my needs grow, my volume of whether it's licensing or hardware or whatever we're talking about in a subscription model can kind of grow with me.
Yeah, and I think since the launch of ThinManager as a subscription, there, of course, it's available for FactoryTalk activation through the software portal, as well as our traditional activation. There has been some initial interest, not overwhelming interest, but that's kind of anticipated as the market adjusts to that new buying model.
Sure. I mean, we've been doing 20 years of one way.
Absolutely. So that's only going to grow. And again, it offers our customer base that flexibility to purchase the licensing the way that they need to purchase it and what works best for them.
Well, Doug mentioned the portal there. This is really going to be our go-to-market tool, right? Is the software portal for those FactoryTalk activated components, right? And that software portal has a lot of advantages to it. It's going to allow for pretty quick, simple, ease of procuring software, as well as enable things like automatic renewals. You'll be able to set up automatic renewals, have things sent directly to you. On connected machines, you'll be able to have all of your software automatically renew, push new activations, renew your support. Be a very automated service. So there's a lot coming from the greater Rockwell team on the benefits of the portal across our software portfolios, but really excited about what that's going to bring too.
Right. I mean, there's obviously much more in ThinManager in the portal as well. So gives you kind of one base to start at too. All right. So the last question I have is version 12, ThinManager version 12, which is currently slated for the last quarter of this calendar year. Really by the end of the year. What is something from you guys? What is a wow feature that you think? And I guess I work on the marketing side. So what is the wow feature that you think people are really gonna love? Whether it's the web browser, built in natively, or what do you got?
I think Nick hit the nail on the head. I think the web browser display client is really a game changer for us. And as he alluded to earlier, essentially what that allows a customer to do, if they're delivering web-based content today in ThinManager, they've got to stand up a remote desktop server, and they've got to host their web browser on that remote desktop server in order to deliver it to a ThinManager managed client. What the web browser display client eliminates is that need to host a web browser on a remote desktop server. So that web browser runs natively and locally on the ThinManager managed terminal. And that way you kind of reduce that server-based infrastructure that Nick was alluding to. And it makes kind of that cost of entry for ThinManager, a lot more palatable even for smaller deployments.
Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Plant. Both Doug and Nick can be reached with questions. They are real people. Their contact information can be found on thinmanager.com on the contact page. If you like this episode, please click the subscribe button and subscribe to The Plant for a monthly discussion on emerging automation technologies. For more information on ThinManager, please visit thinmanager.com from any of your devices. I'm your host, Bryan Harned, and we look forward to talking to you next time on The Plant.